Noodle. Hi, Noodle. Oh, hi, Noodle. Hello. Hello. Oh, it's a doggy competition down here. We have both doggies fiending for attention. Everybody wants love. So I'm sorry if my voice is a little bit froggy. I'm getting over kind of a nasty cold that I had earlier in the week. And I'm still just like a little bit froggy and gross. But I wanted to chat with you guys about my engagement ring and my like wedding stack and the process of like choosing my ring and finding my ring and that whole experience, because I've gotten a couple of comments asking for like a deep dive on the engagement ring. So I figured I'd take off everything that I'm wearing and just kind of go in depth on the engagement ring itself. And then I can also include like info about my wedding bands, because I feel like they go together, you know? You get engaged, then you get the wedding band. It's the whole thing. So when Ben and I, when we like started talking about marriage and, you know, realizing that we wanted to get married to one another, I knew I wanted our engagement to be a surprise. Like I didn't want to know when it was happening. I didn't want to know how it was happening. I had a couple like stipulations. I didn't want to be like skydiving. I didn't want it to be like an adventure proposal, basically, because I wanted to just like be able to enjoy the moment and not be worried about like whatever adventure activity we were doing, which is just so funny to say out loud. But Ben made a joke one time and was like, I'm gonna propose to you while we're skydiving. And I was like, no, that does not sound fun to me personally. If it's fun to you, like sweet, but I'd be too scared, man. Anyway, so that was like my one stipulation. Other than that, I wanted it to just be like intimate, and I wanted my family there to celebrate with me. And that was literally it. Those were my only stipulations. Other than that, I was like, I don't want to know what's going on. I don't want any involvement. And I kind of felt the same way about the ring. Like I knew people that literally picked out their engagement ring and then like were proposed to, you know, months later or whatever, but they knew what the ring would look like. And I wanted a little bit of surprise with the ring, but I also wanted some control over it. And honestly, looking back, I think that was something that I would do differently. Like if I could do it all again, I think I would just pick out the ring myself, because it's something you have to wear every day for the rest of your life, theoretically. So if I could do it again, I think I would pick out the ring myself. And I'll explain why when I go through sort of the whole story. Ben took me ring shopping for like 6 months before we got engaged. And the reason was that I thought I wanted a very specific ring. I'll insert a picture of like what I really thought I wanted. It was an elongated cushion cut solitaire with a bezel setting. I was really into bezels. I thought I loved the idea of a bezel. And that was what I wanted. I knew I wanted it in gold because I wear gold all the time. And I was like, I don't need to go ring shopping. Like, this is my dream ring. I love it. Just get that ring. And Ben was like, but you don't know what size you want the diamond. Like, you have no idea how they look on your finger. What if you want a different shape diamond or a different cut because it looks better on your finger? So he basically convinced me to go ring shopping with him. And I'm really glad he did, because when I started to try on cushion cuts, I did not like how they looked on my hand. I felt like they just made my fingers look weird. Like they didn't flatter me, and they are so beautiful and I wanted it to work, but it just was not a style that flattered my hand. And then also, like, through talking to the sales associates, I learned that bezels are kind of, they sit typically, not always, but they sit lower to your finger. And I wanted a ring that sat really high so that I could stack my wedding bands up nice and close to it, and they would all sit flush together. So that kind of ruled out the bezel setting for me. So I'm really glad we went ring shopping, because I could ask those questions and like understand how it all worked together. And try things on and make sure that stuff looked good on my hands. So that's sort of when I realized I kind of wanted an oval. I didn't want a round cut. I just felt like it looked similarly odd on my hand. So I didn't want a round cut. And I kind of landed on oval at that point. And I still knew I wanted a solitaire, and I knew I wanted a slightly larger stone, because it was just gonna be a solitaire. I didn't want a pave, which is like the diamonds on the band itself. I didn't want a halo around the diamond. I literally just wanted like a very simple ring. And so I wanted a larger diamond since it was gonna be the only thing like on the band. So we tried on a bunch, and that was kind of it. That was all we talked about. And then Ben went and worked with a jeweler over the next few months to source the diamond and to create the ring. And I'll also insert a picture of what my engagement ring looked like before, because I had it reset. So I had the band changed. Same diamond, different band. And when we first got engaged, I really loved the ring. It's a 2 carat lab grown diamond. And this oval is like the classic oval proportion, whatever that means in the jewelry world, but it's like 1 centimeter tall by like 0.6 centimeters wide or something, which I guess is like the more kind of like classic proportion for an oval. So that's something else that I thought was interesting about ovals. And I guess like really any cut except for a round cut or like a perfect square is that you can kind of change the proportions. Like if you want an emerald, you can have a really tall, skinny emerald, or you can have almost a square emerald. And it's just something else to think about that I didn't really know until I got engaged. So yeah, that's kind of the specs on the diamond. And it's 2 carats in size, which I kind of knew I wanted like 2 to 3 carats because I wanted it larger, and I have pretty big hands. So I feel like I could kind of have a larger stone because I don't have like tiny little fingers. It wouldn't drown me. But I didn't want too big that it would look like costume jewelry. So I kind of wanted it large, but not like ginormous. So hence where the 2 carat came. And we went lab grown because I always just wanted like a conflict free diamond. I just really like the philosophy of lab grown diamonds. Yeah, like that's kind of the reason I went more for like the ethics route. And it was nice too that it was a lot cheaper than a natural grown diamond at that size. Like a 2 carat natural stone is going to be a lot more expensive at the color and clarity that we got it. So that's the deets on the diamond. And then I'll show you the picture here of how it was originally set. So it was basically, I think it was a 2 millimeter band, which was a little bit thick for my liking. I wanted something way thinner and daintier, especially because I knew I was going to stack it with like 4 or 5 other bands over the course of my life, that I wanted it to be thin. So you can see here, this was the original setting. I wanted it to be thinner. This was a 2 millimeter band. And then you'll also see that it was, I think it's called like a chandelier, or it has a name. The 2 posts going up the sides. Good God, Noodle. I didn't love how that looked. I felt like it added a lot of extra gold and a lot of extra metal when I really just wanted it to be like as minimal as possible. And I also didn't like how the basket underneath it kind of covered so much of the diamond and you lost a lot of light from the diamond. I didn't love that either. So I felt like there were a couple things about the setting that I wasn't super fond of, but I loved the ring and I didn't get it reset for a year. So I wore it as is for a year before ever deciding to get it reset because I wanted to like make sure that I actually wanted to get it reset. I knew it would be fairly expensive to do it and I didn't want to just like jump into it on a whim. So after kind of living with it for a year, I was like, okay, I do want a thinner band. I want like a more minimal setting. I didn't want all of that extra metal kind of around the diamond. So I went to a jeweler. We were living in San Francisco at the time. And I went to a jeweler in San Francisco and asked if they could, I went to a few jewelers to ask if they could reset the ring, but use the gold because the gold that this is set with is sentimental. So this was Ben's grandma's gold from one of her pieces of jewelry. So I wanted to use that gold and have them just melt it down and reset the band. And a lot of jewelers wouldn't do it because they didn't know the exact makeup of the gold and how, if it was 14 karat or 18 karat and how much alloy it had, and that makes it difficult to reset. But I found a jeweler that I talk about all the time on this channel. They're called Number 3 Jewelry in San Francisco. They're amazing. We got our wedding bands there. We reset this ring there. Like, I just love them. I will scream from the rooftops that they're amazing. And I went in and asked if they could do it, showed them the ring, and they said, yeah, we can. And they had a couple like different settings that I could choose from. And because as a jeweler, they carried a lot of different jewelers inside of their store. So I could choose from a bunch of different styles of setting, which I really liked. And they also carried a lot of yellow gold, which was nice. So I could kind of see what it would look like, you know, in the finished product. They had like finished set rings in yellow gold that were a similar carat size to my diamond, so I could really see how it would look when it was done. The setting I chose, you'll see here, it's kind of hard to focus, but I think it's like 1.2 millimeter band. So it's way thinner. And then it has 5 prongs instead of 4 prongs. Ovals typically are set with 4 prongs, I think, is kind of like the standard. Mine has 5 prongs, no basket, to hold it, and it all just kind of goes down into this point at the bottom. And that fifth prong adds a lot of security, because when you get rid of the basket underneath, it's easier for the diamond to fall out. And when you get rid of those two posts going up the side, it's easier for the diamond to fall out. So having that fifth prong adds a lot of security. I love how dainty the prongs on the diamond are. Like, you can barely see them. And it's hard for like cameras to focus on diamonds just because they're glittery, but you can barely see those prongs, which I love. So it really gives the illusion of like a floating diamond. And I think that's so cool. The prongs are there, they're just very small and very dainty. And in the old setting, the prongs were a lot larger and really kind of like overlapped the diamond. And I just felt like they kind of took away from it. So I don't know, this setting I'm just obsessed with. I think it's really dainty. It's exactly what I wanted from the beginning. And that's why I say, maybe going back, I would have just picked my ring myself, because I feel like I could have had more control over the setting. I knew that I wanted an oval, but like Ben's not a jeweler. He's not an expert. So he just went to this jeweler who was really an amazing jeweler and super well respected. And the jeweler did it in his way. And Ben didn't really like guide him in any way to be like, oh, she wants it thin, she wants this, she wants this. Like, he just sort of was like, here's an oval stone, set it however you would usually set that diamond. And so that's kind of why I'm like, I think if I could do it again, I would just pick it out myself, because I would know exactly like these little nuances of like, oh, I don't want a basket underneath, I don't want the prongs, I want, you know what I mean? But like, hindsight's 20/20, and I'm kind of glad that it worked out this way, because then we found the jeweler that would do our bands, and it was like, you know, a lovely like coincidence to find and work with that jeweler. So I think all in all, it worked out really well. Your toy's over there. But yeah, that's sort of the new setting, as you can tell. So if you're looking for something similar, I would definitely recommend just going to number 3 and working with them, because they're the only ones that I've ever found that do this 5-prong setting. It's pretty unique to them, and I also like it because it helps you kind of figure out which way is up for your ring. So I always know which way the ring is kind of pointing upward. But yeah, it's pretty unique to them, and I love it. So when Ben got it, originally he had it engraved, and that was another kind of like stipulation when I went and had it reset, was that I wanted them to be able to engrave it. I didn't want to lose that. So they were able to engrave it. It's really hard to see, and it is literally so tiny, but it's like not even gonna focus on this. You can kind of see it right in there. There's a tiny engraving. And the fact that they were able to engrave on like a 1.2 millimeter band, or however thin this is insane. Like, I'm so excited that it worked out. So yeah, that's kind of all the details and like the story of my ring, and I love it. I'm obsessed with it. And there was nothing wrong with the first style. It just wasn't like a perfect fit for me. I think it's still beautiful. It's much more classic. The first setting that I had is like very classic, like tried and true way to set a diamond. And I think that's beautiful. Just wasn't completely my style. I knew I wanted multiple wedding bands because I love to stack jewelry. And I knew I wanted them to be like very similar in width to the engagement band. So since the engagement ring was 1.2 millimeters, I kind of looked for bands that were also 1.2 millimeters so that it would all just like match and look really nice together. So this is my first one of my wedding bands. It's just solid gold, and I think it has like, I don't know, 10 diamonds, just sort of like every so often around the band, there's just a dot diamond. And I thought it was just super minimal and very dainty, simple. I like that I can wear it alone. It has like a little bit of sparkle, but like nothing too crazy. And I didn't really want to like take away from the diamond in the engagement ring. So then the engagement ring goes on top, and they're the exact same width. They're both 1.2 millimeters, which I love. And the reason also that I love that this sits high is that they sit flush next to each other. So they just bump up right next to each other because this sits high off my finger. And then the next ring is this wave band. I think I've talked about this before, but it has this kind of cool little like wave to it. And it's just plain solid gold, no diamonds or anything. And I love that. I think that's a cool little way to like add texture to the stack. So that's what I did for my wedding stack. And they all kind of sit flush with the diamond popping up. and they're all like 1.2 millimeters. So it's kind of like a very uniform look, which I like. So yeah, that's all the details on my engagement ring. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. Let me know if you guys have any more questions in the comments. I can definitely answer them. And yeah, I will see you guys soon. Bye.